Hey guys, let's talk a little bit about eligibility for grants. Um, what I'm always telling folks about when they're searching for funding, the number one thing you look at first when you find a great opportunity, you think it's going to be fantastic. The number one thing you look at is eligibility. There's usually always an eligibility section that tells who they fund. If you're looking at a federal grant, it may say state governments only. It may say, or municipal governments. So your nonprofit wouldn't be eligible for that. We have to make sure, like at Concord, for example, we can apply as a 501c3 nonprofit organization or as an institution of higher education. So if the eligibility doesn't say that, I can't apply for that grant. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's pretty set in stone. What they have in those in that grant information or that request for proposal is pretty well hard and fast. You can say, well, I can apply anyway and see if they'll take me. No. If you're not under one of the eligible categories, you can't get that grant. Okay. So that's the number one thing to look at when you're doing a funding search. Okay. So be sure to look at that because that's a killer. That automatically disqualifies you. And then you do a bunch of work and do a proposal for nothing, which is really frustrating. So, be sure to take a really good look at eligibility. Now, along hand in hand with eligibility goes appropriateness. Is the grant appropriate for what you're trying to do? If you're doing a small program, that may end up costing around $10,000, and then you're applying to a grant has a minimum. Sometimes there's a minimum and a maximum of funding. Has a minimum of funding of $50,000. It's not really appropriate, right? I mean, yeah, money's always good, but if you can't spend it, it's not really going to work. So you have to make sure your program is appropriate. And there's another video I posted about types of funding. Is it the right type of funding for you? Is federal funding what you need? Would you be better served with a foundation grant, with a corporate grant? Would you want to scale and maybe just do a state grant and then a federal? So making sure that your type of project is appropriate for the funding source is really important as well. So be sure to keep that in mind. We can't always shoot for the stars with a federal grant. A lot of times those big grants are hard fought battles. The multi-million-dollar grants came from years of small grants. Okay. So, from multiple sources. So, you have to make sure that what you're asking for is appropriate. Okay. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at funding searches. When you're doing your funding search, it's really important. Eligibility and is it appropriate?